The rain was coming down in relentless sheets as I stood in the dimly lit alley, cigarette smoke swirling around me. My trusty sidekick, Ink, a formidable Cane Corso with a coat as dark as midnight, sat loyally by my side. She was the only friend I could count on in this godforsaken city, and tonight she looked as determined as ever. We were about to dive headfirst into a case that would prove to be my most challenging yet. The victim, a wealthy art collector named Evelyn Sterling, lay lifeless in her lavish penthouse, a bullet hole through her heart. The room was a whirlwind of opulence, with priceless paintings adorning the walls and exquisite sculptures scattered around. The place screamed wealth, but the atmosphere reeked of death. As I stepped into the crime scene, my eyes fell on the disarray. It was apparent that there had been a struggle. The ornate vase lay shattered on the floor, its delicate flowers crushed underfoot. A chair was overturned and a painting, now askew, revealed a hidden safe behind it. This wasn't a mere robbery. It was personnel. Captain Lawson, a stern-faced man with a perpetual scowl, greeted me with a nod. He was never thrilled to see me around, but he knew I had a knack for solving the tough cases. "Gray, you're here," he muttered, his voice dripping with annoyance. "Always a pleasure, Lawson," I replied, smirking. "What do we know so far?" Lawson grumbled before giving me the rundown. The security cameras in the building had mysteriously malfunctioned during the time of the murder, leaving no footage to review. The penthouse alarm had been disabled from inside, suggesting the killer was familiar with the system. No fingerprints were found anywhere in the penthouse, except for those of the victim. It was as if the murderer had never been there. "Any witnesses?" I asked. Lawson shook his head. "The neighbors didn't hear or see anything. This killer knew how to be silent." I crouched down to examine the broken vase, noting the angle at which it had shattered. It was clear that Evelyn had tried to defend herself. Her fingernails were broken, and there were traces of skin under them. "I'll need a list of everyone who had access to this penthouse," I said. "Anyone from the building staff, friends, family, even the mailman." Lawson raised an eyebrow. "You think one of them did it?" I shrugged. "I think we need to leave no stone unturned." As we gathered information, I couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. The crime scene was too clean, too perfect. It was almost as if the killer had orchestrated the whole thing to frame someone else. Over the next few days, Ink and I tirelessly interviewed everyone on the list. We uncovered a web of secrets, betrayals, and hidden agendas. Evelyn's estranged husband, Richard Sterling, had a motive: money troubles and a crumbling marriage. Her art dealer, Victor Lestrade, was in financial turmoil and stood to gain from her death. Even her stepson, Lucas Sterling, harbored deep resentment. Each suspect had an alibi, a reason to be innocent, and no concrete evidence tied them to the murder. It was infuriating, like trying to piece together a shattered vase with no glue. I decided to re-examine the crime scene one last time, hoping to find something I'd missed. As I stood in the penthouse, I glanced around, trying to see through the smoke and mirrors. And then it hit me, the painting that had been askew. I approached the artwork and examined it closely. It was a breathtaking landscape painting, but it wasn't the content that caught my attention. It was the signature. It bore the initials ES, which were oddly similar to Evelyn Sterling's initials. She had an identical signature on her collection of paintings. I called Lawson and asked for a handwriting analysis on the signatures. The results were clear. Evelyn had forged the signatures on all her paintings. It was a brilliant scheme, one that allowed her to sell counterfeit art at exorbitant prices, all while building her own collection of genuine works. Evelyn had been living a double life, one that was about to crumble. When her art forgery ring was on the brink of exposure, she concocted a plan to fake her death and start anew, with a new identity and a new fortune. She had carefully framed her husband, stepson, and art dealer to divert attention away from her. With this newfound evidence, I confronted Evelyn at her secret hideaway. Her eyes widened in disbelief as I revealed the truth. She had underestimated me, thinking she could outsmart both the police and me. As the rain poured outside, justice was served. Evelyn Sterling would face the consequences of her actions, and her art forgery empire would crumble. Ink and I walked away from the crime scene, the sound of sirens fading into the distance. Another case had been solved, but the city's mysteries were far from over. We were always ready for the next one, ready to plunge into the dark gray shadows.